Yes. Okay. Oh. Okay. So sifai kusema hizo vitu. Eh. Lakini ziseme tu ni relax.
The most important thing is to know by the end of this what do I want to achieve. Period. If you have that, reaching there will be easy.
Okay.
That, your name, who are, and then we have been having conversation of devotions, but in this era, we want to talk about personal finances.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, camera.
See, easy.
Camera is not easy, bwana.
And do you know, in a setup when you're preaching, it's so easy.
Too easy. Yeah. But when you're on camera now, you're like, it's like some gun has been put on you. Like, nini nasikika? you. Thank you for joining us for this broadcast. It's a privilege to have you from wherever you're watching us from. By the way, you could let us know where you're watching us from, especially if you're on Facebook, on YouTube, and it would be a pleasure just to have you. We have been having devotions every morning from 9 o'clock at this hour from Deliverance Church International, Umoja. But today we decided to take a different turn, and instead of having the devotions, I want to have panel conversations, and we want to venture into certain areas that we've felt are of concern to God's people and many other people out there, and we wanted to just have a conversation, get the facts. How can we respond as God's people? Because we are real people with real issues who are before a real God for real solutions. And so today we are going to talk about personal finances in this era of COVID-19, and how do you manage finances? How do you handle finances in this era of COVID-19? And I believe you'll be blessed as we do so. And why should we talk about finances? And we are church people. It's because Psalms 24:1 says, the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. Haggai 2:8 says, all silver and gold is mine. And the entire Bible talks about stewardship of finances. And so we want to talk a little bit about that. So I've got some wonderful men that are here. We didn't, observe the 1/3 gender rule, but we'll do that in our next broadcast. But I've got some wonderful people to help me navigate this space of personal finances in this era of COVID-19. And by the way, as we do so, you can, send in your comments on the Facebook comments page. You can share what we are doing here. You can create a watch party, and we'll be giving you a number in a moment where you can send in your questions and comments as we proceed. And so I want us to, our guests to introduce themselves rather, and tell us, what they do so that we can proceed from here. So I'm going to ask them to go ahead. We're going to start with you on my immediate left.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much, Pastor Richie. My name is Geoffrey Gidome. I love the Lord. I'm born again. I'm a minister of the gospel, but together with that, professionally, I'm a professional in operations management and also a qualified accountant. And right now, I'm doing a lot of leadership with a personal interest on Christian leadership in the marketplace. And we are here to just go through this and know what can we do as Christians when we go through these tough times. And we welcome you. We believe, God, you give us victory even as we share some wisdoms on how we can be able to manage our finances. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoffrey. All right.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Pastor Richie. My name is Paul Gunyi. I am a business and personal success coach, and the subject of personal finance is very important in success. So it's a pleasure discussing it this morning, and looking forward to interacting with you as we do it from here and as you do it from your point of isolation. Thank you very much.
All right, Paul and Geoffrey. Interesting facts on the ground. Interesting ones. And talking about facts, I think there's a time I read a book by Jim Collins, Good to Great. He says one of the ways you can be able to survive and become great in any space, any environment, is you have to confront the brutal facts. And so we want to look at some brutal facts. A few days ago, InfoTrack released a survey they had done with regards to COVID-19. 63% were concerned, of Kenyans were worried and concerned about their personal health and personal finances. And then it talked about, 76% were worried if they're going to make their ends meet through this pandemic period. And then 55% were eagerly waiting for the president to say something about rent reduction, something about affordable health, because they're not there. And then a couple of, yesterday, I came across a report by BBC that was saying, projecting 300,000 may die. We are praying against that in Jesus' name.
Amen.
But it's also saying 29 million Africans may be pushed into abject poverty. Brutal facts. What do you have to say about brutal facts in this era of COVID-19? What should we be aware of as we approach this era of COVID-19? For that common man, what are the brutal facts they should be aware of and should handle? Yeah.
Thank you very much. And one thing that we need to do and to know that we are dealing with a global pandemic. We are not in isolation as Kenyans, as people who are in Africa, as people who are in this county of Nairobi or wherever you are watching us from. This is a global thing. We are not dealing with an isolated case. We are dealing with something that have hit nations that are high, that are economically even more powerful than we are. We are dealing with things that it's not, we are not dealing with a problem that have been pushed to us by someone. We are dealing with a crisis thing. And one thing that I looked, if we could draw down now to our level, so many economies and so many sectors have been affected. Look at the transport, the real estate, the manufacturing, the hospitality industry. And me and you, we serve in those sectors. So in one way or another, we get affected. This thing is not up there in the skies. It have reached us. Look at even how we are doing church. Even us who are in the church community, we have been affected. Pastor Richie, if this was another day, we could be here in the church praising, worshiping, gathering. But look at even what this have affected us. There are new instructions. There's social distancing. You can see even we are
Trying our best.
We are trying our best. There is the mask. There is no chatting, no hugging, and all that. So those are the brutal facts I would think that we need to agree on. And just to summarize it, finance is not an isolation. When those brutal facts hit us, they hit us because two things are not happening. In the business world is the buying of goods and services. And when buying and goods is not happening, economy is affected. And to bring it even closer home is because there is not much movement.
Yeah.
And when we move, when people move, they transport. They transport goods, they go for services, they go to sell services, they go to buy services, they go to transport goods. But for example, in Nairobi, there is a lockdown. We cannot move. And that is the brutal fact, that we can now move, we can't sell and easily as we used to do. We can't go to get services. So those are the things that we need to agree. We need not to hide ourselves under the sand. We need to know this is what we need to do. And just to summarize it, I love what the scripture says, that the men of Issachar were wise. They knew what the Israelites, they knew the season, and they knew what the Israelites are supposed to do. And for us as Christians, we need to know this season. Why, which season are we in, and what do we need to do? And I guess Pastor Richie and all of us watching us here, that is why we are here.
I tell you.
We are wise by the Spirit of God. We know what we are supposed to do. We are knowing the season. We are facing the brutal facts. And that is why we are here, to navigate and know what are we supposed to do.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. They say to be forewarned is to be forearmed.
Yeah.
And then they say, ignorance is bliss, but it doesn't last for long. That bliss doesn't last for long.
Yeah.
So Paul, what are your thoughts on the brutal facts?
So my thoughts are that, one, of course, it's very important to appreciate the fact that we are here in this crisis now, and it is real. It's not something to think about. It's a fact. It's already here with us.
Yeah.
So the question is not whether it is with us or it's not.
Okay.
The fact is not, the question is not whether it shall. It's already here. The question that is important for now is to ask ourselves then, how do we proceed from now onwards? And even as we think of that, it's also important to appreciate this because human beings have always been faced with crisis.
Yep.
If it is not the entire world, a country could be faced with an epidemic. Right now we are facing a pandemic. But we have had history. History has told us that such things has befallen men before. Spain has been attacked before. Even Kenya has been attacked before with all these kind of illnesses in the past. If it is not into illnesses, it is other catastrophes. If not catastrophes, natural catastrophes, it is attacks like terrorist attacks and so on. So But the good news is that human beings are very resilient,
Yep.
very resilient.
Yep.
So, and that is a fact also that we need to remember, because we must not be brought down by the fact that this pandemic is finishing us. Unfortunately, it will have to go with a number of our friends, maybe our relatives.
Unfortunately,
That's a sad fact again, right? And it's brutal. It has already taken in Kenya quite a number of lives. And we are being warned every day that this could take a few more lives or many more lives, depending on how we behave. So the kind of mindset we adopt now will determine how we are going to survive now, in the near future, and in the long run. So we need not to play around with it. We need to say, yes, here we are, and it's done. So what do we do next? And the most important to think about is to know, to appreciate also that different people will be affected differently. That's a fact also.
Yep.
Right now, as we speak, even if everybody thinks they are being faced by a difficult situation,
Yeah.
there are some people who are having it very well. People that are in
wow.
essential business or essential services like health, food,
Yeah.
and these other things, this is their time.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
those
I'm telling
businesses
you.
are
Yeah.
doing good business. But of course, it's a small portion of business, not so big. Now, the fact is that there are also other businesses that will be very badly affected because they cannot run. And also that's a fact. Be crushed by losing our loved ones, our friends, our neighbors, and so on. These at the end of all these, and we hope it doesn't last
Yep.
so long.
Yep.
There is the other side of life.
Exactly.
The most important thing for us now is to keep alive.
Yes, I tell you.
So we must keep alive by protecting ourselves. We must keep alive also by saving, ensuring we measure our resources, we use our resources properly right now,
Tell you.
because we do not know how this is going to last. So if you, and we are lucky that this thing started happening around, in Kenya, I think around, we started talking about it around February.
February, thereabout.
Then March it happened. Many people have already been paid March salaries.
Yes.
All the businesses were running in March. Now that we're in crisis, I hope that's already prepared everybody to see how it is that we can just adjust around that. And there are a number of things that we have to do. First, we cannot eat and do our project as has always been done.
No, it's not
The
business
fact
as usual.
is that if you have a project running now, it is likely to be delayed by another 1 or 2 months, maybe 3 months, and that's a fact. So it's not, we are not here to negotiate of whether or not we are going to be affected. The negotiation we need to be having is, how are we going to safely find ourselves on the other side of the disaster?
All right.
Because disaster always strikes.
I tell
So
you.
we will discuss a little more of things that we can do financially
Yes.
to help us actually reach the other end
And
of this.
I guess our viewers are eager for that conversation. But I just want to remind you that are watching, we have got some SMS numbers that you can use to send your SMS messages, your questions, your comments, so that we can respond to them on this live broadcast. And so you can use the number 01100084445, 01100084445, or you can use 01100084443. That is 01100084443. You can use those lines to text us, and we'll respond to your comments. There's somebody, talking about brutal facts. There's a Bible teacher when I was much younger in the faith who taught us that faith does not assume there's no mountain. Okay, faith says there's a mountain, but speaks to the mountain and says, "Mountain, move." And so we are not encouraging the kind of Christianity that says, this is not happening, that is denying the fact. But we are saying we are promoting and encouraging one that looks at the facts and trusts God to help us deal with those facts. I've got a thought. I mean, their incomes have been affected. That's one of the brutal facts. There are those who still have some little income coming in. There are those who are thriving. I mean, those who are doing business, they are making masks and, medical equipment. This is their time. They are like, smiling all the way to the bank. But then there are those who still have, 70%. Some of them, their salary has been, cut by 50%, and, being forced on leave. And they have some little money coming in. What do they do with the little that is coming in? Some of them are hand to mouth. Hand to mouth. They're able to do one or two jobs. There's a fundi who came to my place yesterday. I gave him 500 bob. What do they do in this space? How do they maneuver? How do they manage the little that is coming? We'll talk about those who don't have later, but let's talk about those who have little coming in. What do they do with that? And probably could start with Paul. You seem to have had some thoughts about that. Maybe you could, 2 minutes or so, give us some thoughts, and then we could hear from our brother.
Yeah.
All right.
So you are right. There are some people who could be in a position still to be earning. Some 100%, some 50%, some a little money. Now, the first thing is to ensure that, and to try to push as hard as possible to have something running if there still avenues to have that run. For instance, if you are doing a business and you can open it, luckily in Kenya we are not in a full lockdown.
Yep.
Full lockdown means, and there are some countries who are in full lockdown, you cannot go to open a shop. You cannot go to run any sort of a business. You cannot do anything. Luckily in Kenya we can do a bit of it. So if you can do something to bring some income to sustain you for a bit of time, that would be great. Now, if you cannot, then it is now time to evaluate where you are financially in terms of how much money do I have right now? Then how much obligation do I have right now? The obligation, I mean, you could have some most people would have the obligation of a rent, paying for the house. Okay, you also have other obligations like paying for utilities, power, water, and so on. There are other things that you could be doing, and of course, most basic is food. Now, the first thing you need to do is once you need to evaluate and ask yourself, with what I have, what can I avoid doing for the moment? Because as I said, this is not the time to prioritize on projects. This is time to prioritize on living life. Now, it is therefore time to negotiate first. If you are able, for instance, to negotiate with your, I would not advocate that people refuse to pay rent.
Yeah.
But I would advocate for negotiation.
Negotiation.
Go
okay.
to your landlord. Ask them, look, we are in a difficult situation. You know, I usually don't delay my payments. Of course, if you've been delaying.
Yeah, if you've had a good record.
That's going to be a problem. Because they will not believe you are coming to take advantage of the situation. But you've been faithful and you've been paying well, or even project, or even loan at the bank. And you have some loan at the bank and you have been paying, you can go to the bank and tell them, I would request that you postpone this. Let's not count 1, 2, 3 months. I'll start repaying. The beauty we are in is that the kind of crisis we are in is not coming to destroy businesses per se. Because it's not destroying infrastructure, it's not destroying roads, it's not destroying our offices, it's not destroying, it's like delaying, it is disrupting. So it means that if this thing is announced, that Corona now is under control, we can easily just go back to our businesses and start where we left. So it's not destruction, it is simply some delay. And this is why people also need not to panic. Let's not panic because when it stops, we'll continue with our lives. So we're going now. So see how you can spread that, and if you are in a position to also help, see how you can help someone else. Because of course there are those of us who simply have nothing to live on, and we'll be talking about it later. This should also, I think the worst thing would happen if this disaster ends without teaching us something about finances, how we manage our finances. Teacher. So if you have something like that, it's time now to revert to that and use it sparingly. Even for those who think they have quite a bit of money, it is not time to misuse it. It is time to use it very wisely because we don't know how this would happen. Were it not for restrictions also, maybe I would have advised, if you are able to go to a place where the cost of living is a little low, go
Too
there.
late, too late.
But unfortunately now, if you're in Nairobi, you've been locked. You cannot go to Kisumu, you cannot go to Kimuranga and other places. But let's stay there. That's okay. That's how, and this is to tell us as human beings, we always need to be ready for anything, anytime. We cannot just live like that. We must be deliberate in the way we live. So even in this season of uncertainty, it is very important to be deliberate on the way we live, the way we think, the consumption that we consume from the media, that like what we accept as truth, taking things seriously and protecting ourselves, protecting our loved ones, and just being responsible citizens. I think it's very, very important to
Awesome.
observe that at the moment.
Awesome, thank you. I mean, we decided in our house that we are going to, do basics like ndengu and, just basic meals. And we're just doing one meal a day. By the way, we're doing it after breakfast. We're doing it late afternoon. Then now at night we just drink some, lemon tea. My wife kind of believes that lemon tea and ginger, that concoction, can save us. So we just do a bit of that and some groundnuts or something. We go to sleep.
Absolutely.
And we try to just make sure we can stretch what we have with the little we have, and so that we don't spend so much. Because this thing may go up to July, and worst case scenario, and we need to survive that. Somebody taught me some time ago, survive the tragedy to tell the story.
Absolutely.
And so we're just working on that safe mode. And so, brother, I mean, what
just
yes.
before because it's tuned to that, before my brother responds to that, there's this thing that the people need to be very careful about, because people have been saying it's better that I die of corona than I die of hunger.
Yes.
It is absolutely wrong.
Yep.
People need to stop joking.
Yeah.
The example, Pastor, you've given is very, very good.
Yeah.
That we can afford to live at a very minimal
minimum,
consumption right now, because you're not working. We don't need to think so hard. We can sleep all the day if you want. So survive on the minimum. Don't say you better die of hunger. Those are the people that don't fast. I mean, how many days can you fast, Pastor?
You can go up to 40 days, it is said.
If you have corona today, and God forbid you have some underlying medical conditions, how long can you last? Within 2 weeks or
2 weeks
3
you're
weeks,
gone.
1 month, you're done. So it means...
Pastor Richie, I would like to look at it and just to add on what Paul has said, but using two flip sides. And especially that we are talking on a faith platform. And I like what you said is, we will not hide from the facts. The Bible says that about Abraham. He faced the facts. He faced the fact that Sarah, we are living in different seasons. Even financially, you cannot continue doing the things that we used to do. You've just quoted some cases where I used to pay my debts. When you're not thinking, when your mind have not been renewed and transformed to know that we are in the new season, we are having a crisis, and we need to admit. And most of the times when someone have that job cut, people have lost their jobs. When you have not admitted that, you can even go to emotional breakdown. And can I say this, that there are so many things that happen emotionally because of how financial life is. And sometimes they did a survey and they said even about divorces. There is a high percentage of divorces happening, even in the Christian community, and it's because of finances. So it's first time we admit that now we are in a new era. And I will advise this as a banker. This is not the time to have those secret accounts in your family. Admit that we need now to put everything on the table. Consolidate everything. Let's join hands. Let's see what we can do. That is admit. Then the second one, adjust. And God have given us a lot of power to adjust. The human being is very powerful. And just using an analogy of even the body itself. Look at how we are seated here.
Yeah.
If at times the first time you look at this chair, it looks so high.
Yeah.
But you need to adjust and sit,
Yes.
and you're now comfortable.
Exactly.
If you are told to sit down, you sit down on the grass.
Yeah.
This body can stretch. This body that stands and walks straight can also bend. This hand that moves this way can also move this, can also move this way. Let's learn from the body. That the same way this body can adjust.
You can
Even
adjust.
in our life, God have given us ability to adjust. And this is just in line with what my brother Paul was saying about adjusting. And it is a simple thing working with a budget from a financial point of view. Work with a budget. And what is a budget? It's a simple thing. When you look at the income, you compare the income that you have or whatever is in your hands versus the expenses that you have. That is where adjustments comes in. And it comes, you look at that budget, you say, this is what I'm spending. And our viewers, I would like to tell you, a budget is a very key thing and a key tool for financial management. Because when you've heard of people saying, I had some money, I didn't know where that money went.
It happens to a lot of us, I'm telling you.
I went to town with 5,000. I came back with 2,000. Unaanza kutafuta where the money went, you don't know where that money went because you don't have a budget. A budget actually tells you where your money went. And where your money went, you can be able to do the adjustment.
Exactly.
When you look at that list, a simple step, Pastor Richie, you look at that step and those budgets, and you say, this is the new normal. And you say, look at all those budget items in the things that you are been doing. And don't worry, this is not a financial jargon. It's just simple of this is the income I have, and these are the expenses I have. And expenses are shelter, food. You know, let's try to paint a picture of a budget, of a typical budget.
Yeah.
And you would look at, you pay shelter, you pay food, you pay for the house manager, you pay for gas, you pay for utilities, for the gas. Start looking at that. You pay for the barber shop. And our sisters out there, you pay for the salon and the makeup. Let's start looking at that budget and see, now that these are this way, my brother Paul, what can we knock out?
Yes.
For example,
Clearly, you and I, it seems like he's still shaving.
and on a typical budget, you hear people saying, I have a charmer. Yes, you can continue with the charmers. We travel, we do merry-go-round, we meet, we do nyama choma, we travel to Ushago and all those things. So there are things that you can now knock off. I'm not traveling to Ushago. You can help your parents, but you don't need to travel now. Actually, you can't travel.
You can't.
You knock those things. You look at the gas, you knock. And I love something that you said about you adjust your meals. You don't need to eat a heavy breakfast, a heavy lunch, and a heavy dinner. You adjust. Look at something that you can do, our sisters out there. You can, instead of buying the snacks, you can now start doing some bakery in the house.
I tell you.
You do some mandazis, you do some snacks. The children are there. They don't need to eat all those meals. And usually our children are good. When you give them snacks, you save. For example, you go to the grocery, you buy those cereals. You come and boil them yourself. Get a jiko, boil. And I learned from a friend of mine who I will not disclose, and they know themselves because they could be in this panel, that you don't need supper. You take strong tea and some groundnuts, and they are beautiful. You just take one meal. I can tell you they are knowing who they are. Pastor Richie, I learned from that. And that is now the facts issue, the facts things. Perhaps those are the things that you can break down. Look at that budget. Because, as Paul said, the critical things right now is shelter and food.
Critical.
Critical shelter and food.
This is not the time to look for a new cloth.
You cannot.
No.
For example, if you're in the debt management, if you're having a debt, start now negotiating. With your creditor and start saying, now I'm not be able to pay now. I can be able to pay. If you're able to pay the rent, well and good, pay. But if you're not able to do that, negotiate with the landlord and say, I've been faithful. I can now, perhaps I have 20% of the of the rent. Let me pay this, and I'll pay this. And for sure, because they are humans, they are also going through this. They can adjust. And allow me to conclude by saying the spiritual part of it. And for me, I have a passion to speak financial issues on the Christian world. Because for us Christians, we at times we hide ourselves, and me being one. And we need to know that God calls us to be faithful, even with the little that we talked about. And there is something that I've written, a small guide that I'm calling it Managing My 90%.
90%.
Managing my 90%. Because you need also to look at that. After you have given your tithe and offering, how do we manage our 90%? And one way we do that is by saying it is literal. And this is, allow me to conclude and say, this is the spiritual aspect of it. God works with the literal. And all the way from Genesis, we see God working with the literal. Actually, you see the widow of Zarephath. There was only a literal flour. And the spiritual intelligence came in, and there was food for them. You look at the woman whose sons were to be taken by the creditor. Actually, debt management again. She only had a literal oil.
Jar of oil, yes.
Oil. But through negotiation and through food, and the accountants of that time say, even an 8-month salary wage cannot feed these people. And Jesus said, enough of you, accountant. Let me teach you some spiritual intelligence. Bring the 5 loaves and the two fish. And he gave thanks, and he increased. All through, God works with the literal. And at times, with all respect to our literal income, at times it is in the mind. At times, and for us who are Christians, we need to believe God. He is the God of the literal.
Amen.
Look at, even as I conclude, look at the Israelites. They have come from Egypt, where they are eating. Look at their wilderness. In the wilderness, they are having only one menu. Back to our menu again.
Yes.
Only one menu. Manna only. And you see, but there was hope for them to get into a land flowing with milk and honey.
I tell you.
And because they never managed their literal,
they complained about their literal.
They complained about their literal. And no wonder they died. So it's high time, even spiritually, for us to be faithful with the literal.
I tell you.
And how we handle our manna moment, we will tell whether we can get our honey moment.
I tell you. Wow.
Amen.
How we handle our manna moment will help us get to the place where we can handle our honey moment. And I pray that that comes to pass.
Amen.
Thank you so much. We'll still remind you to keep your questions coming. We have some questions that have been coming. I mean, there's an interesting question before we get to, the last question I wanted to ask. An interesting one on fintech and the loans that are being offered. I think this is about the loans that are being offered on mobile phones and things like that. And somebody is asking, can you borrow that, survive on that until this crisis is over? Because I know some people who borrow and then they pay and then they borrow back the same day. But then a friend of mine was saying, the other day he tried reborrowing and they had minimized because of COVID. So I don't know what you've got to say about, fintech loans. Then we can talk about something else. Just briefly. Yes.
So first of all, I think one of the things that we must discourage and you must avoid at this point is borrowing. Avoid getting into debts. It is time to survive on what you have. So if someone already has a salary, why do you want to pay? Then you can get it from them again. All right? As pastors, you say, it is possible that you could pay. Then by the time you're trying to reborrow again, they have discontinued that.
Yes.
So you're in trouble. It is better to deal with the interest a month or 2 months later than actually fail to live right now. Okay? So if there is anything I want to discourage now, it is borrowing. Only if anything, if you can find some sort of assistance that's not necessarily adding burden onto you, the better. But of course, if you can have someone who can lend to you without necessarily charging you interest, meaning that don't go to the bank, don't go to the Shyrocks. By the way, Shyrocks, don't even try, even under normal circumstances. Don't go to Shylocks, not even only now. Although even them now, I don't think they are giving anything. They're also on survival mode.
Yes.
But just to add on that and to tie to what my brother said about the 3A, I want to remind people about 3D, which we'll go to that as well.
Yep.
The first D is the reason we find ourselves in trouble most of the times is because we deny, we live in denial.
Denial.
We do not believe yet this thing is here. We do not believe God can allow this thing to happen when we are here and we are His people. We do not believe, we deny. The more you deny, the more you are not able to go to the next step of adjusting. And if you don't adjust, then what you do is you derail, and that's the second D. You derail out of what should be happening. So that if you're supposed to be at peace and you deny, and this they continue adding numbers, they continue saying things, you really get derailed. You get disturbed. You get your view of life get distorted just because you are not accepting. You are denying. So learn to adjust, and one of the way of solving that is adjusting to what there is right now. And the last one, if we don't adjust and you borrow a lot, you're not able to pay, you'll go to depression.
Oh, wow.
That is why we are now, people are fighting at home. There is a lot of increased domestic violence. Why? Because someone was told, please, this is a budget. Every day we are surviving on 100 bob. Then they go and spend 300 bob. They are in denial. They don't want to agree that how can I survive on 100 bob? And right there, because one has agreed to go to adjust, and the other one is still in denial, they fight. So you're not on the same, planner. So let's learn to accept, don't deny. Let's learn to adjust so that we do not get derailed from life. Remember, we are saying the most important thing that we must do now is live. And the next thing is let's avoid going to depression, because around this time, that's when, and it's good that my brother mentioned about the psychological situation. Remember, by the way, most of the things that happen in life to us have happened in the mind first. So the depression simply comes out of pressure and stress that we are not able to handle. So we continue not dealing with it. We don't deal with it. We don't adjust. We don't handle it. We don't tackle it. We don't define it. We don't even see the reality of it. Then it actually hits us so badly in form of what we call depression. And when depression happens, many bad things will happen, including bouncing back after the trouble. If you are faced with a tragedy anytime, and it's not just the COVID-19 tragedy, it is any other tragedy in life, that if you find yourself there, go through these 3 steps very quickly, so that now you can go on the other side, because you cannot go beyond to the other side until you deal with what there is right now.
Exactly.
Yep. So don't borrow.
Don't borrow. Okay. Any 2 thoughts about that?
And you know what the Bible says, that the borrower is a slave to the lender.
Yep.
This is not the time to borrow. Live within your means. And most of the time, we go to borrowing to sustain our lives. And it's very, very uncomfortable. Debts can take you to stress. And unfortunately, Pastor Richie, debts have even taken people to grave.
Yep.
To the worst. And it brings psychological issues and all that. So I concur with my brother. Right now, debt is no.
It's a no-go. You had mentioned earlier about investments, and somebody was asking about that investments thing. I mean, is it an appropriate time to invest, or just to hold back, or are there areas we should try? Are there areas we should not? What would be your advice, Paul? You had mentioned something about investments.
Depending on remember the first thing we said is evaluate your financial status right now. Evaluate and get to know where we are. If you are at a position and you can see in the next few months, 3-4 months, I can survive, and I still have some surplus, I can actually invest. And yes, it's possible to invest. There are still businesses, remember, that are doing well. We're saying that. Just that you may not know what those businesses are. And you're not going to start a business. So there is a means of investing, and many people already, even before the disaster started, were investing in, say, funds, money market funds. So like you have some, every month you put some 10,000 into a fund, and at the end of the year it has earned you some interest. So that could be some sort of investment. Another investment is, and this of course, you need advice from the expert. You need to, because here, of course, we may not necessarily give detail of how you need to invest. You need to consult someone that can help you know right now, for instance, in the stock market, when things are so low down there. What can I buy? Because the best time to buy probably is when things are not
down.
working. For as long as we are sure that in a number of other months, 6 months, even 1 year down the line, you will live big, because it is time, actually. Some of the biggest, greatest wealth. Lots of money lots of wealth is made in times of disaster like this, where you can see opportunity that other people would not see, or when everybody is running away from an investment. Because remember, investment a number of times is emotional. The stock market actually is quite emotional. So when things are not working, people pull out. When things are working, they want to come in. So if you have something to spare, it is time to put it. Of course, you also don't put it on any on any desk, on any stock. You put it on a stock that of course is functional and is able to come up
So you
again,
may need to
so
get
that
the
in another
surfaces,
1 year you can actually reap something. So yes, it is possible to invest, and we usually say those things actually go together. All those things go together. We allow me to say this, that around this time, one of the ways we are surviving, we run a club called the Better People Club. And in that club, and we also do trainings. So we have a training called, we call it, we train people on how to become better people, on improving themselves and improving their businesses. And around this time that we are not able to meet, what we did is we challenged one another to read books. And one of the books we are currently reading is called The Richest Man in Babylon. One of the things, actually, that book from beginning to end, talks about earning, saving, spending, and investing, and all those things go there. As my brother was talking about managing the 90%, that 90% is very important, even at this moment. Of course, right now you may not invest as much as you would have invested earlier, but if you have some money to spare, yeah, sure, you can invest.
Wow.
Yep.
Talking about the 90%, somebody taught us some time ago that God is not just interested in the 10% that we talk about in church. He is actually more interested in how we steward the 90%. And you can give your 10%, but if you don't steward well your 90%, you may get into as much trouble. And so may God help us. We have limited time. We have got a short time. So I want us to respond to a few questions and just briefly, maybe give it 30 seconds of a response. We see if we can cover this question. So there's a question about separating wants and needs. So a quick one, just a quick one. What do you have to say about that? Then we can have Paul talk about that for a moment, yes.
Very fast, Pastor Richie. Needs are what you need to survive on. And wants are good. They are better to have, but the good thing with wants, you can do without them. And going back to our budget analysis, what is critical right now is food and shelter. So I would say the needs are now the shelter and the food.
Yeah.
When you're talking about wants, there are guys, my fellow men, who go to the gym. That is now a want.
I want, yeah.
You want to go for nyama choma. That is now a want.
Yes.
You now go to a certain club and meet people. That is a
You're
want.
not even allowed. If
So
you're found, you will be quarantined.
Actually, yes. So you take your family after church. You go. You take them for to the fast food joints, and those are wants now because they can eat the one meal we talked about in the house. So that is how quickly I would separate the needs and the wants. Critically, let's look at shelter and food.
Okay,
Yes.
I think that's very clear, you know, and just live on bare minimum. If it won't kill you, then you don't, you know, if doing without it won't kill you,
Yes,
then you
yes.
can do without
You
it.
can
You
do
know,
without it.
it's time to survive this season.
Yes, yes.
All right, Paul. Maybe you could say something a little bit about people who are having zero income. Where do they start? I mean, what do they do? I mean, our conversation so far has assumed you have some little income somewhere, some money you're hiding in a chama. But, you know, now there are guys who are on zero. Where do they start? What do they do?
So you remind me of what we call the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how we meet those needs. And as my brother says, we are right now at that bottom of the pyramid where we just need food, I mean warmth and just the basic minimum to survive. So for this person who has nothing, no money to buy food, what would happen? Now, first of all, it's important to learn that yes, it is possible, to appreciate that that can happen for whatever reason. And for now, this is not the time to start thinking or to start telling people, why didn't you have this? Why? What? Of course, we'll have a session on you need to now. Next time, you can't be found like this.
Yes.
You can't prepare yourself. So for now, look for some means of survival. Today, the government, for instance, is giving food to the most vulnerable.
Yes.
All right? See if you can benefit from some of that food. All right? There's also a lot of charity going around. All right? Like where I come from, there are a number of people that are coming together to see if we can come up with a package of food that can take a family of 4 or 5 for a month at a budget of less than 5,000 bob. So there are people around that can easily give. Okay, so what your task now is to connect yourself with one of those. If you're not able to get one of those, then this is also where you leverage your relationships.
Yes.
You got to leverage your relationships
Exactly.
because your kin, some of your kins have more and than they can spend. You could ask them to assist you. Again, don't go in the name of borrowing. Okay, if you borrow, fine, you can return much later. The good thing is that if you borrow from your friends or relatives, they may not charge you interest, so you'll just pay for what you ate.
Yeah.
But now start using your good name. And that's why the Bible tells us about good name. Unfortunately, for those who have their bad names, who have spoiled their names by asking, even when you are able, there are people who also ask for money and they don't pay.
Yeah.
This is a very bad time for them, unfortunately. So as we said, some of the fact is that some people will suffer at this time, maybe because they are not very careful or because they have not managed their relationships very well. But at best, try and see the easiest you can manage. Even sometimes some people are moving houses. If you are living in a small house where you are paying 2,000 and now you can't, you can join up with another person and cut that and use what you would have paid for the house. Put in food, all right? And so that even when you are borrowing, you're asking people to help. You're not asking to help so that you can meet other needs. You are asking for help so can you meet the basic. And you can even say, don't even send me money. Just give me food, I'll come and correct. Because sometimes people they don't want to give money. Because
yes.
sometimes you, especially to men, unfortunately, men, we are told if you give man money, they are going to just have themselves some fun, but it's not going to benefit everybody. But when you give it,
That was coming to my mind is pride. You may just have to put down your pride. In this season, it's not a season for pride. It's a season for saying, yes, I drive this, but I don't have food in my house. And be able to now get, there's a question about those affected business-wise, which way to go. You'd mentioned a few things about business, but I would want you, Geoffrey, to just, jump in a little bit on that business angle. What do they do? Then we can now begin to wrap up our conversation. Just briefly, business people.
Yeah. Most of the businesses, as we started by saying, most of the businesses are affected. Whether you are in the transport, whether you are in manufacturing, whether you are in employment, you are affected. And you as an employee, either as the sole proprietor or even as an employee, you are affected. Businesses are affected. And just to push it from even a personal level, use the same example and you put it in the business world. Also live with a minimum. If your business, you are paying rent, you are paying a high rent, there are no customers coming. Every time organizations, when they go through this, they do what we call the downsizing, the lean management model, where you now go and pull down your cost. So if you're a business person, whether you are an SME, whether you are a high business, whether you are even mama mboga there, look at your cost now, or otherwise, all the costs that you have been saving may be eaten up by this period. Look at your sales. In fact, I would challenge, look at whether it is viable to close the business for now. Look at if banks have some of the banks are rescheduled their banking hours. They have rescheduled their policies. Look at how many businesses, the hospitality industry. Let's not also hide and think that because we have small businesses, we can be affected. Critically look at what can you survive on. What are the costs? What are the things that would call needs and the other ones, even at the business model, and kick off those, put those things onto hold. If you have stock and it is not moving, customers are not coming, but you are still paying an employee, you are still paying some other overhead costs. Put those costs down, and you will survive.
Wow,
Yes.
awesome. Time is really flown. I wish we had a lot of time, but I just want to give you a chance. As I give you a chance, probably you could do in your closing remarks.
Yes.
As you respond.
Yes.
You could combine that.
Yes.
Then we can be able to take care of time. So go ahead, Paul. I mean,
one other thing that people need to do in business and also in personal living is plan. Use this time to plan for when things get to normal.
Yeah.
Some people have used this time to revamp their, or rather to what do you call the recarpeting and painting and all that. Refurbish. Some people have used this time to refurbish their offices, to replan, to clean up, to paint, so that when we reopen, it's gonna be we are ready. Others use it on planning. Now, the last year I did badly here. Now that I have a lot of time and I can think about it, let me do this. One thing that I've always wanted to do and I have not done. So use that time to strategize. Use this period like a strategy season to plan and strategize how moving forward are you going to do. And as I close, this is the same thing for everybody, for business and for individuals. When you earn, know that you must plan for that money. Don't just live anyhow. Live a deliberate life. You cannot afford to live like, life has no guarantees. Well, today you have this, tomorrow something is happening. Today you are running this business, today you are in this employment. So don't live like you are forever there. So plan, earn properly, save, make sure that you save, invest, spend wisely, and ensure that you are in control at all times.
Wow,
thank you very much.
Amazing. So Godfrey, I mean, time is up, but I would give you a chance, some 30 seconds for closing remarks, then we can, wrap up our conversation for today.
Yes. We are in a different season. Know your season and adjust accordingly. We are not in the normal way of doing things. Use the facts that we have shared or the facts that you have heard of about the wisdom concerning finances, concerning the businesses. Use those facts. And together with that, especially as a Christian, also have faith in God.
Amen.
Times and seasons belong to God. Things come and go. even this one we shall overcome.
Amen.
There's something that I just thought, that when finances reach to the end and we reach our end, when the financial management and all that comes to the end, Jehovah Jireh comes in.
Come on.
He comes and he provides for us. When all the medical issues, when we are not able to meet our needs medically, and we need to pray for people to be healed, and people to be safe from diseases, because that is a very critical thing. A medical bill is a very critical thing. But however, it's also to encourage our viewers that when even we have done all that we can, and medically we have reached our end, Jehovah Rapha picks up.
Come on.
And lastly, even when we are going through emotional issues because of finances and all that, and our blessed men psychologists come and advise us, and they reach their end, and we don't have peace, they have to help us to have our peace. Jehovah Shalom picks up.
Come on.
Let's face the facts, but let also give God a chance, because out of all this, God is also working for us.
Amen.
Thank you.
Wow, I would be tempted to think you are more of a pastor than a financial expert. I was saying all amens there. Thank you so much, Geoffrey and Paul, for taking your time to be with us and to share your thoughts and the wisdom God has given you to God's people. I believe that you've been blessed. You can continue letting us know if you've been blessed by this on our Facebook page, on the comment section, and God will bless you as you do so. The just shall live by faith. Amen. Romans 1:17. And that's my challenge to us, that yes, we are faced by these brutal facts. Things are difficult on the ground, but the just shall live by faith. We must trust God in these difficult circumstances. Remember, admit, adjust, adapt, so that you don't, deny and then derail and get into depression. Amen. Now, good news is that we are continuing with these conversations every morning from 9 o'clock. And so tomorrow we'll be having a conversation about emotional health. That's very critical from 9 o'clock. We would ask you to join us. We would ask you to share with your friends, invite them, create watch parties. Let's have this conversation. On Thursday, we're going to have a little conversation about, homeschooling and education in this current context we are in. On Friday, it will be amazing. Family life in this space. There's a lot that's happening in homes now that people are confined. We want to talk about it on Friday, and we believe you'll be blessed. So we'll ask you to join us, and I believe God will do something amazing in your life. Allow me to pray for you as we trust God in this difficult, and this is not the last of our conversations on finances. We're going to have more coming, and so stay tuned. And so allow me to pray for us and trust God as we finish. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you because you're a God who is above the circumstances we are in. The whole world is shaking under the weight of this COVID situation, and finances have been affected. Economies have been shaken. Economies are shrinking, but you are the same, oh God. You say you are the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. You never change. You're not subject to circumstances. You are God Almighty. I pray, remember your people who are facing these facts, yet they are trusting in you. I pray, come through for them and remember them. The orphan, the widow, the poor, the underprivileged, the disabled. Thank you for watching. God bless you. See you tomorrow.